Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. 3 words in Hebrew. 3 words that cracked open the entire cosmos. Pastors quote this verse every Sunday. Scholars write about it. Theologians debate it. But almost no one has told you what those 3 words actually mean in the original language. Not the translation, the real thing. Because when you see it, really see it, you will realize that God did not just tell Moses his name that day. He revealed the architecture of all existence. And here is what nobody is talking about. The name God used was not a noun. If the name of God is not a noun, then what exactly is it? And why does that one grammatical detail make the entire universe look completely different? Stay with this, because the answer is coming. Let us set the scene. Moses is not a young idealist standing on holy ground for the first time. He is a man who already failed. He tried to be a deliverer once, and he killed someone. He ran. He hid in the desert for 40 years. He married, raised a family, tended sheep. He was done with Egypt. He was done with Israel. He was done with himself. And then a bush caught fire and did not burn up. God speaks from that fire, tells Moses to go back to Egypt, to face the most powerful ruler on earth, to demand the release of millions of slaves. And Moses asks a very reasonable question. He says, paraphrasing, "Who exactly are you? Because when the Israelites ask me your name, what do I tell them?" Now, here is where most Sunday school lessons completely gloss over the weight of that question. Moses was not asking for a label. He was asking for a credential. In the ancient Near East, a name was not just an identifier. It was a declaration of power, origin, and nature. When a deity gave you their name, you understood their domain. You understood their limits. Egypt had gods of the Nile, gods of the sun, gods of death, each one defined by what they controlled, each one defined by what they were not. Moses needed to know, which category does this God fit into? And God's answer so broke every category that existed. He said, in the Hebrew, 3 words, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, pronounced Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. Your English Bible says, I am who I am, or sometimes, I am that I am. And most people read that, nod, and move on. But here is what they do not teach you in most churches. That word, Ehyeh, is a verb. Specifically, it is the Hebrew verb Hayah, pronounced ha-yah, which means to be, to exist, to become, to happen. And it is conjugated in what Hebrew scholars call the imperfect tense. The imperfect tense in Hebrew does not describe something completed. It describes something ongoing, something that continues without interruption, something that is still happening. So when God says, Ehyeh, He is not saying I was. He is not even just saying I am. He is saying, I am continuously, actively, perpetually being. No beginning, no interruption, no end. And then he says it twice. Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. The word Asher, pronounced Asher, means who, which, or that. It is a relative pronoun connecting the 2 verbs. So the full construction is, I am continuously being. That which I am continuously being. This is not a simple answer. This is God refusing to be defined by anything outside of himself. Every god in Egypt had a limit, a domain, a boundary, a story about how they came to exist. This God has none. He just is. The name is a verb, not a noun. It is an action of pure, unending existence. But here is what we still have not answered. Why does that matter for you today? What changes when you realize the God you pray to is not a static being, but an ongoing, active, self-sustaining reality? And there is something deeper hiding in this text, something the translators cannot fully capture, something that connects this desert moment to a scene over 1,200 years later, when a man in Jerusalem said 2 words, and the crowd tried to kill him. What happened in Jerusalem over 1,200 years later? What 2 words were so dangerous that they triggered an attempted execution? And what does that have to do with Exodus 3:14? The word Ehyeh, from the root Hayah, pronounced Ha-Yah, Strong's reference H1961. The Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew lexicon defines Hayah as to be, to exist, to become, to come to pass, to happen, to occur. Notice that last cluster, to become, to come to pass, to happen. This is not merely static existence. This is existence that is always occurring, always unfolding, always alive. Now here is something most people never see. In Exodus 3:3, just 2 verses before God names himself. He says to Moses, in Hebrew, Ki Ehyeh Imach, pronounced Ki Ehyeh Imach. It means, for I will be with you, the same word, Ehyeh, the same verb. God is not giving Moses 2 separate statements. He is giving Moses one unified declaration, I am, is the one who will be with you. The name and the promise are the same word. Think about what that means. When God says his name is I am, he is not giving Moses a theological category. He is giving Moses a companion. He is saying, the infinite, uncontained, self-existing being is also the one who walks next to you. That is the first shock of this text. But there is a second one. In Exodus 3:15, immediately after naming himself Ehyeh, God says, tell them Ehyeh has sent you. Ehyeh, the 4 Hebrew letters, Yod, He, Vav, He. What scholars call the Tetragrammaton, the sacred name that ancient Israelites considered too holy to speak aloud. Most English Bibles render it as Lord in capital letters, which is a translation choice, not a translation of the word itself. Here is what those 4 letters actually encode. Ehyeh is the 3rd-person form of the same verb Hayah, where Ehyeh means I am continuously being. Ehyeh means he is continuously being. God speaks of himself as Ehyeh. His people speak of him as Ehyeh. Same verb, same root. 1st person and 3rd person. Same eternal, ongoing, uninterrupted existence. The name God uses for himself, and the name his people use for him, are 2 grammatical faces of the same infinite verb. Have you ever noticed that before? Now, here is where this becomes almost impossible to fully absorb. In the ancient world, to name something was to have authority over it. When Adam named the animals in Genesis, he was exercising dominion. When God renamed Abram to Abraham, Jacob to Israel, Sne, he was reshaping their identity and destiny. A name was power. But when Moses asks for God's name, God does not give him a noun. He gives him a verb that cannot be completed. He gives him an action that never stops. He gives him a name that cannot be contained in any human category. The theologian R.C. Sproul called this the aseity of God. From the Latin, ase, meaning from himself. God does not derive his existence from anything outside himself. He is not caused. He is not contingent. He does not depend on time, space, energy, or thought to exist. He simply is. And he is that way, without interruption. Now, here is the moment that changes how you read your entire Bible. The verb hayah is in the imperfect tense. The imperfect is open-ended. It is an action in process. It is reality still unfolding, which means when God says Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, He is not describing a state. He is describing a motion, an eternal motion. God is not a mountain. God is not a throne. God is not a fixed point in the universe. God is the act of existing, made personal. A.W. Tozer wrote in The Knowledge of the Holy that this name is the most absolute declaration of divinity that could be imagined, because anything that truly exists because of Him. He is not one being among many. He is the reason being is possible at all. And here is what falls out of this linguistically. Every other being in existence can only say, I exist because something gave me existence. God alone can say, I exist because I am existence. Isaiah 43:10 says, Before me no God was formed, nor shall there be any after me. Isaiah 43:13. Yes, and from ancient days I am He. Revelation 1:8, I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is and who was and who is to come. Each one of those texts is an echo of Ehyeh. Each one of them says, I am the verb that never ends. Now we are getting close. The verb, the tetragrammaton, the imperfect tense. They all point to a God who cannot be defined from outside. But we still have not answered the most dangerous question. What happened when someone in Jerusalem used this same phrase? Why did it trigger a riot that nearly ended in execution? There is a moment in the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 58. Where the entire confrontation between Jesus and the Pharisees arrives at its most explosive point. He uses two words that every single person in that crowd recognized immediately. And the reason they recognized them is Exodus 3:14. But there is something in that moment nobody talks about. Something that reveals not just who Jesus claimed to be, but what He is doing right now. What is He actively doing in this moment with that name? The answer is in the next part of this study. Let us go to Jerusalem. It is the Feast of Tabernacles. The temple courts are crowded. Jesus is teaching, and the Pharisees are pressing Him, trying to trap Him, trying to discredit Him. They bring up Abraham. They say, You are not even 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham? They are mocking Him. They are using history to shrink Him. And Jesus answers with 5 words in Greek, which in English read, Before Abraham was. I am, in the Greek text. That phrase is ego eimi, pronounced Ehyeh me, a deliberate echo of the Septuagint language of Ehyeh, the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. Every person in that crowd knew it instantly, not just the Pharisees. Every Jewish person present would have recognized those 2 words. Jesus was not just making a temporal claim. He was not just saying, I existed before Abraham. He was using the covenant name, the burning bush name, the name no one was supposed to casually utter. And the crowd picked up stones to kill Him. John 8:58-59. That is not an overreaction. In their minds, it was the appropriate response to blasphemy. Because only God is I am. And this man from Galilee just claimed to be exactly that. Now stay with me, because this is where it becomes about you. John does not use ego eimi carelessly. Across the Gospel of John, there are 7 places where Jesus uses this phrase with a predicate. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the true vine. 7 declarations. In Jewish symbolism, 7 is the number of completion, of wholeness, each one answering a specific human need. And here is what that means for you, in whatever you are facing right now. If you are spiritually empty, the I am says, I am the bread. If you are in darkness, confusion, depression, or lostness. The I am says, I am the light, if you cannot find the way forward. The I am says, I am the way, if you are terrified of death, loss, or endings. The I am says, I am the resurrection. Do you see what is happening? The God who revealed himself to Moses in a desert, in a burning bush. The God whose name is a verb that never stops. The God who cannot be defined by anything outside himself. He is not a distant philosophical concept. He is actively, presently, continuously filling the exact shape of your need. And here is where I need to ask you a hard question, because Exodus 3:14 does not only reveal who God is, it exposes something about who we are. A.W. Tozer made an observation that is difficult to shake. He pointed out that Lucifer's original sin in Isaiah 14:13 was to say, I will make myself like the Most High. I will ascend. I will be. In other words, the first rebellion in the universe was a creature trying to claim the I am for itself. And Tozer argued that this is the root of every human sin. Every time we live as if we are the center of our own existence. Every time we act as if our will is sovereign. Every time we say, in effect, I am the one who decides. We are unconsciously reenacting the fall of Lucifer. The I am belongs to God alone. Human beings are not. We become. We exist because he holds us in existence. Acts 17:28 says, In him we live and move and have our being. Not next to him, not alongside him, in him. You are not the I am. You are the I am because he is. And that distinction changes everything about how you approach prayer, about how you approach suffering, about how you approach the moments when life falls apart. Because if God is the continuous, uninterrupted act of existing, and you are sustained within that existence, then nothing can happen to you that is outside of him. Not one moment, not one crisis, not one diagnosis, not one broken relationship, not one prodigal child, not one financial collapse. All of it sits inside the I am. We now understand the verb, the tetragrammaton, the 7 declarations of Jesus. We understand the radical claim of Exodus 3:14. But there is still one final piece that locks everything together. Something hidden in the structure of the Hebrew text itself. Something that most scholars notice, but few teachers ever explain. Something that reveals not just who God is, but what he has been doing since the moment Moses stood at that bush. And what he is doing right now, for you. The structure of Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh is not random. The doubling of the verb, the refusal to define, the grammatical choice of the imperfect. These are not accidents of language. They are a deliberate theological architecture, and buried inside that architecture is an answer to the one question that haunts every believer. Every person who has ever prayed and felt nothing. Every person who has ever cried out and heard silence. The question is not whether God exists. The question is, where is he when I cannot feel him? And the answer has been sitting in 3 Hebrew words, since the day Moses stood barefoot on holy ground. Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. Let us look at the structure one final time, because there is something in the grammar that answers everything. The verb ehyeh is in the imperfect tense. We established that. Continuous action, ongoing existence, never completed. But here is what most teachers miss. The imperfect tense in Hebrew is also used for something called the cohortative mood. The cohortative, from the Latin cohortare, expresses intention, determination, or a commitment to act. It is not passive, it is volitional. It is a verb form that says, I will actively, purposefully, persistently be this. Scholars like Walter Kaiser read this context as carrying that covenantal intention, not merely describing what God is, but committing to what He will be for you. So when God says Ehyeh, He is not just describing His nature, He is making a commitment. He is saying, I will be, actively, purposefully, for you. Remember Exodus 3:12, Ki Ehyeh imach, for I will be with you, the same verb. God is not separating His nature from His presence. His nature is His presence, now. The question that has been haunting this entire video: what about the silence? What about the moments when you prayed and the heavens felt like iron? What about the seasons when you knew the doctrines, believed the theology, and still felt abandoned? Here is what Exodus 3:14 says about that. God does not say, I am sometimes here. God does not say, I am here when your faith is strong enough. God does not say, I am present when your circumstances confirm it. He says, I am, imperfect, continuous, uninterrupted, regardless of what you feel. The burning bush was not burning because Moses felt spiritual. It was burning because God was there. Moses' feelings did not create the fire. The fire was already there. Long before Moses looked up, John Piper made a point that belongs at the center of Christian teaching. He said that God's independence and self-sufficiency mean He never acts out of need. He never reaches out because He is lonely. He never saves because He needs worshipers. He never draws near because He needs your love to sustain Him. He acts entirely out of who He is, out of the infinite fullness of I am, which means when He says, I will be with you. It is not a conditional promise. It is the overflow of His nature. He cannot not be present, because He is existence itself. And here is the final architecture of everything we have built today. Moses asked who God was. God answered with a verb. The verb encoded continuous, uninterrupted, self-originating existence. That same verb became the tetragrammaton, the covenant name. That covenant name echoed through every prophet, every psalm, every lament. It reached its fullest expression when a man in Jerusalem stood in the temple and said ego eimi before a crowd that wanted to kill him for it. And then that same man was crucified, died, and 3 days later proved that the I am cannot be stopped, cannot be silenced, cannot be ended. The resurrection is not just a miracle. It is the I am of Exodus 3:14, refusing the verb to die. And here is where it lands for you. Romans 8:38 and 39 says, neither death nor life, neither angels nor principalities, neither things present nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God. That is not a comforting thought. It is a grammatical statement. Because the God who is I am cannot be removed from your situation. He is more present in your hardest moment than the walls of the room you are sitting in. The question was never, is God here? The question was always, will I open my eyes to the bush that is already burning? The silence you have felt in prayer, the seasons when God seemed absent, were not evidence that He had left. They were invitations to understand that the I am is not dependent on your emotional weather. He is, continuously, actively, for you. And that has been true since before the universe had a name. What you just encountered is not a theology lecture. It is a burning bush moment. Take it seriously.